things go better.
That's Victoria Stewart and Ed Amon, and that's the panel for this afternoon. Checkpoint is next, and that stand-up in the Beehive Theatre at 5:15. Good afternoon.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irarangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. In Haere nei, a man has been shot dead by police following an attack at a West Auckland supermarket. At least 6 others are injured, 3 of them critically. Witnesses heard multiple gunshots and people screaming inside the New Lynn countdown. Frightened bystanders barricaded themselves into a neighbouring pharmacy. The Prime Minister and Police Commissioner are due to give a press conference shortly. We'll go to that live, and we have reporters at the scene. Meanwhile, MIQ investigates whether door alarms were working and CCTV was being watched after an escape. Who broke the internet? Cyber criminals take down a major service provider. And footpath dodgems in lockdown. What is the measure of your 2-metre manners? Don't forget, you can watch us live on Facebook.
Ahi Marie, RNZ News at 5, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. 6 people have been injured, 3 critically, and a man has been shot dead after attacking people at a supermarket at an Auckland mall this afternoon. St John's says ambulance staff were called to count down Lynn Mall in West Auckland at around 2:40 this afternoon. Witnesses say at least one person has been stabbed. Police say a man entered the supermarket in New Lynn and injured multiple people. He was shot and died at the scene when police located him. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, and the Police Commissioner, Andrew Costa, are due to hold a press conference shortly at 5:15. You can hear that live here on Checkpoint. Eyewitnesses have been describing their panic as events unfolded. Paul Turvey was shopping at the supermarket when he says chaos broke out as people realised an attacker was on the loose.
I just thought this was going to be a minor skirmish. A couple of people ran it, and then everybody started running. And the customers were running, and the staff were running, and then some people were running back. And at that stage, I started to get quite scared. It was quite contagious.
Anya De Vecca was among a group of people who barricaded themselves inside the Lynn Mall pharmacy. She told Radio New Zealand she had been to get her COVID vaccination and was waiting outside the pharmacy for her 15-minute stand down when she heard screaming. When they heard gunshots in the mall, some people ran into a back room in the pharmacy where the vaccinations were being carried out. She says people were panicking and upset. One woman was struggling to breathe. There was no lock on the door, so 2 men stood against the door to block it. Eventually, they were escorted out by pharmacy staff out a back exit. An Auckland man out for a lockdown walk near Lynn Mall says he saw armed police descend on the scene. Mike Norman was walking along Great North Road when he saw an agitated woman in a vehicle blocking the Lynn Mall car park exit and yelling out for the police.
I only got about 200 metres and the police started turning up in force. Well, they just were all screaming into the car park. I couldn't see anything that was happening. There was 3 ambulances and 2 paramedic cars that turned up. And then the defender squad, obviously.
Mike Norman says the atmosphere was tense and he saw emergency services heading into countdown, but he did not see anyone come out. He says he was concerned about his safety and decided to continue on to return home. Health officials believe an Auckland quarantine hotel escapee posed no risk to public safety. The man who is infected with COVID-19 fled the facility early yesterday morning. He was arrested at a house in Otahuhu that afternoon and has been charged with failing to comply with a health order. Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson says the escape is regrettable.
The advice that we have had from the Auckland Regional Public Health Service on the basis of all of this information is that there was no risk to public safety through this incident. However, it is clearly a regrettable incident and one that is now being thoroughly investigated.
There are 28 new community cases of COVID-19 today, with 1 in Wellington and the rest in Auckland. An attack on a major internet infrastructure provider this afternoon was a ransom attack, likely to have originated overseas. Vocus lost services for about an hour, affecting a number of companies across the country, including Spark, Vodafone and Slingshot. Auckland University of Technology computer professor Dave Parry says the DDoS, or denial of services attack, was a clear message being sent by hackers.
The question about whether they'll get a successful attack through, I suspect that they probably will try again, and they may be successful for a time, but it'll probably be a shorter outage next time because there'll be a lot of resources being moved into the cybersecurity space right now.
Professor Parry says he would be surprised if a second attempt would be successful on the same company. Moving now into sports news, the New Zealand long jumper Anna Grimaldi has broken the Paralympic record twice on her way to winning gold in Tokyo. Grimaldi's winning jump in the T47 classification was 9 centimetres ahead of silver medalist Alexandra Moguchaya of the Russian Paralympic Committee. Grimaldi has gone back-to-back after also Paralympic gold in this event at Rio's 2016 Games.
It's been a huge 5 years and I just feel like the weight of the world is just lifted off my shoulders. This is the most nervous I've been for a competition before. Throughout the entire competition I felt like I was going to throw up. I was so nervous.
With several senior players staying in New Zealand for the births of their children, the All Blacks have made several changes to the team for Sunday's third and final Bledisloe Cup test against the Wallabies in Perth. Joe Porter reports.
Lock Scott Barrett replaces Sam Whitelock with number 8 Adi Savir to captain the side for the first time. Brad Webber starts at halfback, taking over from Aaron Smith, with Bowden Barrett at first 5 in place of Richie Moonga. Anton Leonard-Brown returns from injury at centre. The All Blacks have already wrapped up the Bledisloe Cup for a 19th straight year, though the game doubles as a rugby championship match.
And finally, Gina Crampton has been named as the new Silver Ferns captain for this year's series against England and Australia. The Stars' wing attack will be supported by new vice-captain Sulu Fitzpatrick of the Northern Mystics. Amelia-Annick Inacio and Jane Watson are unavailable for this month's series against England and next month's series against Australia. And that's the news.
Tomorrow morning, the new science of gene editing promises to quell malaria. Professor Ethan Beer is at the forefront. Lou Sanson's leaving the Department of Conservation after 8 years at the helm. And philosopher Tim Dean says we need to ditch moral beliefs that no longer suit the modern world. Cork and Hillaho join me tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa, funded through New Zealand On Air. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāharoi Saturday. For Northland, Coromandel and Gisborne, cloudy periods and isolated showers, clearing about Gisborne overnight. For Auckland to Manawatu, including Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, also Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, you're all going to have lovely fine days. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, fine today, partly cloudy tomorrow with isolated showers for Horowhenua and Kapiti Coast. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, cloudy periods with isolated showers, gale nor'westerlies in Fiordland tomorrow. Otago and Southland, fine today, increasing high cloud tomorrow and strengthening nor'westerlies, possibly reaching severe gale in exposed parts of Southland and Clutha. And for the Chatham Islands, also lovely and fine. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāharoi Saturday. It's 7 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Sarah. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. A visit to an Auckland supermarket has turned fatal. One man is dead and at least half a dozen people have been wounded, 3 of them critically. Here is what we know so far. Things started to unfold just before 3 this afternoon. The man was shot dead by police inside the Countdown supermarket at Lynn Mall in West Auckland. Witnesses heard multiple gunshots and people screaming from inside the store that someone had been stabbed. With Auckland still in level 4 lockdown, people waiting nearby for COVID vaccinations hunkered down in a pharmacy, barricading the door. The Prime Minister and Police Commissioner are due to give a press conference shortly and will go to that live when it happens. But first, let's go to our reporter Louise Tanuth, who is at Lynn Mall. Louise, what is happening there now?
Hi Lisa, well obviously we're in level 4 lockdown at the moment, so the place is pretty deserted in general, but as you can see behind me there's a heavy police presence here at the scene, and you can see some cars in that car park too. Those are people that are still waiting to get out. Some of them are still needing to give statements to police, and they say that they'll get most people out in the next hour or two, but police say that the mall will be shut for the next couple of days as things move forward, if not the next week or two.
What can you tell us about the injured?
So there were 6 people injured at the supermarket by the man that was shot by police. 3 of those are critically injured and at Auckland City Hospital. 1 is in a moderate condition at Waitakere Hospital, and another person is in a moderate condition at Middlemore Hospital.
And have you managed to speak to any witnesses?
Yeah, there's a lot of distressed and shocked people here at the scene this afternoon. Most people could obviously never have envisioned something like this happening in their neighbourhood. Most of them out shopping at their local supermarket in level 4 lockdown for their essential shopping. I spoke to Michelle Miller just before she was about to begin hers.
I was actually originally going to go shopping into Countdown. I saw this guy running around attacking people. It was just absolutely horrific. I feel sorry for the Countdown staff. I feel sorry for the people that were actually hurt here today. My prayers go out to them. The police have done an amazing job. They let the guy try and give himself up, but he wouldn't. It's really sad that they had to do what they had to do. But at the end of the day, they were thinking of their safety as well. And my heart goes out to these police here today. They've done an amazing job.
Sure. So when you say you were going shopping, were you in the Countdown at the time?
I was just about to go into the Countdown, and I left my car and went down to go back to my car because I was pretty shaken up.
Yeah, and when you say you saw him attacking people, what did you see?
Just running around with a knife, and then he just lost the plot. Whether he was on drugs or whatever he might have been on, I do not know, but I stand by the police on what they've done here today. They gave him an opportunity to give himself up. He didn't want to, and I don't want the people thinking that these police are out there just shooting people randomly. That's not what happened here today. The police done really well. They worked their hearts out, and I will give my hand over to these cops for what they done today. Yeah.
Did you see anyone that was injured coming out?
All I heard was a lot of screaming. I heard when I went down to my car, I heard the gunshots going off.
And what was the atmosphere like when you were going to your car?
The atmosphere going to my car, there were so many people standing around. I think they were all absolutely beside themselves. They can't believe that this could be so close to home.
And that was a witness who was inside the mall at the time of the attack. Meanwhile, Anya was inside the mall also at a pharmacy for a vaccination as the drama unfolded.
I just heard that someone was getting stabbed, and then I heard like 6 or 7 gunshots.
Whereabouts were you, Anya?
I was waiting just outside of the pharmacy in Lynn.
Yeah, and what brought you into the mall today?
I was getting my COVID vaccine.
Okay, and so how far away is the supermarket from where you were?
About like 20 metres.
Yeah, and can you tell me what could you hear? Could you hear people talking or yelling, and what sounds?
I could just hear the people at Chemist Warehouse just yelling that there was someone getting stabbed. Then like a bunch of security people started like approaching the area, and then I just heard gunshots, and it was just very chaotic.
Pretty scary it sounds like too, Anya.
Yeah, it was. I tried to stay as calm as possible.
And where did you go?
I went inside the pharmacy. So mostly everyone who was just waiting there just ran into the pharmacy and what hid in the little rooms.
Yeah, tell me about that. Whereabouts did you go exactly?
So they're like these the rooms where you get the vaccine. They're like real small, but we went into those. There were about like 7 of us in the room, including like a little baby.
And did you lock the door, or what happened?
Well, there was no lock on the door, so this one guy just like stood near it, and he kind of like used his upper body to like stop it from opening.
And what were people saying in the room?
People were literally just panicking. Everyone was like calling their families. Some people called the police. They were just all trying to stay calm.
Did you call anyone, Anya?
Yes, I called my dad because he was waiting for me in the car park.
And what did he tell you to do?
He just told me to stay where I was, and he said that he'll meet me outside.
Subham Prasad was also coming to the mall for his vaccination.
The people who were running,
and
they all were condom stuff, I guess. They all were running, and like I just got a hit from someone that there's still there's a few people inside that killing people, something like that. I don't know.
What were the people saying when they were coming out of the supermarket?
They're saying that people killing inside.
What did you do?
We just because we just came to get vaccine. That's why we didn't go over there. We just walk away from there.
So did you hide anywhere, Shabam? Or?
Yeah, we try.
And what else could you see? Could you see police? Could you hear any other noises?
No, I didn't hear any noises like screaming, nothing like that. That's all I see, just people running like crazy.
An Auckland man out for a walk near Lynn Mall saw armed police descend on the scene. Mike Norman was on Great North Road when he saw an agitated woman in a vehicle blocking the Lynn Mall car park exit and yelling out for the police.
I only got about 200 metres and the police started turning up in force. They just were all screaming into the car park. I couldn't see anything that was happening. There was 3 ambulances and 2 paramedic cars that turned up. And then the defender squad, obviously. Obviously, it's Countdown they were going into, or looked like it. I didn't see anyone coming out of Countdown. And then initially I thought, if they haven't got whoever it is contained, I'm safer here. And then I thought, well, obviously, whoever it is contained, because they're not letting anyone into the area. So I left for my own safety.
Paul Turvey was just leaving Lynn Mall when he heard someone yelling out, "They've got my cell phone." He initially thought it was some minor dispute going on.
And then everybody started running, and the customers were running, and the staff were running, and then some people were running back. And at that stage I started to get quite scared. It was quite contagious sort of atmosphere.
Was there screaming? Were people anxious, scared?
People were extremely anxious. It was a great sort of an atmosphere of panic. And I gather that's because somebody was shooting.
It is 5:15. Kia amo tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. If you are just joining us, there's been a major incident at a Countdown in West Auckland this afternoon. We are standing by for the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner to give a press conference from Parliament, and we will go to that live as soon as it happens. But this is what we know. Things started to unfold at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. A man entered the New Lynn supermarket and appears to have injured multiple people. He was located inside the supermarket by the police and shot dead at the scene. 6 people have been injured. 3 of those have critical injuries, and those people have been taken to Auckland Hospital. Another person has also been taken to Auckland Hospital, 1 moderate patient to Waitakere Hospital, and another person taken to Middlemore. Remember, Auckland is still at level 4, at COVID alert level 4, and those hospitals are under pressure with a number of Delta patients. Witnesses report hearing several gunshots fired, and there were waves of panicked customers, they say, running from the store and screaming. Also, witnesses say they heard people shouting about a stabbing. Another witness says the man was carrying a knife. Other customers were inside the mall at alert level 4 queuing for their vaccinations at a nearby pharmacy, and several of them barricaded themselves into a back room at the pharmacy. There was no lock on the door, so they say that some of the customers blocked the entrance way. AOS is on site, and we heard from our reporter Louise Tanuth that the police are still there in force. Some people are unable to leave at the moment because the police are still taking witness statements. The mall will be closed for several days, if not longer, and some vehicles are still stuck on site as the police clear the scene. As information comes to hand, we will bring that to you. And as I say, we are waiting for the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner at a press conference in the Theaterette at Parliament. We'll go there as soon as it happens. In the meantime, New Zealanders are being urged to avoid becoming complacent after daily recorded community cases dropped to 28. Of those COVID cases, 27 were in Auckland, 1 in Wellington, who was already in managed isolation at a quarantine facility. The Director of Public Health, Dr. Caroline McElnay, says more work needs to be done, but it's a good sign.
While this fall in today's numbers is encouraging, we are mindful that these outbreaks can have a long tail and we can't afford to become complacent. Ongoing investigations by Auckland Regional Public Health has resulted in the total number of unlinked cases falling from 65 to 31. That work is continuing and we expect that number to continue to fall.
There are 43 people in hospital, all in the Auckland area. 9 are in ICU or high dependency units, and 3 are currently being ventilated. So far, 33 people have recovered since the outbreak, and there are 731 active cases. Dr. McElnay says there's been better news with contact tracing, but we're breaking into the story to take you to the live press conference at the Parliament Theaterette, where the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner are due to speak on the incident at the Countdown in West Auckland.
Good afternoon. This afternoon at approximately 2:40 p.m, a violent extremist undertook a terrorist attack on innocent New Zealanders in the Lynn Countdown in Auckland. This afternoon, I want to share what we know about this event, but also what we know about the terrorist. But first, I want to acknowledge the 6 innocent people who have been attacked. 3, I understand, are seriously injured. This was a violent attack. It was senseless, and I am so sorry it happened. The attack began at 2:40 p.m. and was undertaken by an individual who was a known threat to New Zealand. The individual was under constant monitoring, and it was the police surveillance team and special tactics group who were part of that monitoring and surveillance that shot and killed him within, I'm told, the space of roughly 60 seconds of the attack starting. For the detail of the events today, I will pass to Commissioner Andrew Costa to provide detail of the Special Tactics Group operation. I'll then say more of what we know about the terrorist and the government's efforts to protect New Zealanders from him.
Thank you, Prime Minister. As the Prime Minister has said, this individual was under heavy surveillance as a consequence of concerns about his ideology. Today, he travelled from where he lived in Gleneden to the Countdown in New Lynn, as he had done before. He was closely watched by surveillance teams and a tactical team to monitor his actions and behaviour. He entered the store as he had done before. He obtained a knife from within the store. Surveillance teams were as close as they possibly could be to monitor his activity. When the commotion started, 2 police tactical operators from the STG moved to his location and engaged him. When he approached them with the knife, he was shot and killed. I acknowledge that this situation raises questions about whether police could have done more, whether police could have intervened more quickly. I'm satisfied, based on the information available to me, that the staff involved did not only what we expect they would do in this situation, but did it with great courage. The reality is that when you are surveilling someone on a 24/7 basis, it is not possible to be immediately next to them at all times. The staff intervened as quickly as they could, and they prevented further injury in what was a terrifying situation. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Commissioner Costa. I want to share some additional information. This information is not as complete as I would like for reasons I'll expand on shortly. The terrorist is a Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in October of 2011. He became a person of national security interest from 2016. The detailed reasons he is known to the agencies is the subject of suppression orders made by the court. In my view, it is in the public interest to share as much as we can in this case. I'm seeking advice on what we can do to facilitate that sharing of information as soon as possible. What I can say is that we have utilised every legal and surveillance power available to us to try and keep people safe from this individual. Many agencies and people were involved, and all were motivated by the same thing, trying to keep people safe. I know there will be many questions about this case, and we need to confront and address each and every one of them. And there will, as a matter of course and good practice, be multiple inquiries, including the IPCA and, importantly, the coroner's inquiry. It is not my intention, though, to wait for these reports to release what we can, but they will provide additional insight into this attack. Before I open up for questions, what happened today was despicable. It was hateful. It was wrong. It was carried out by an individual, not a faith, not a culture, not an ethnicity, but an individual person who was gripped by ideology that is not supported here by anyone or any community. He alone carries the responsibility for these acts. Let that be where the judgment falls. Jessica Ventoba.
Mentioned that the officers prevented more happening. Maybe this is better for the Police Commissioner. What was planned? Can you give us a scale of what the person was planning to do?
We've had absolutely nothing that would tell us the extent of his intentions, or indeed that he had particular intentions today to go and do this act. Based on our surveillance, what we could tell is that he was undertaking what appeared to be a normal shopping expedition. However, clearly we have been concerned about his ideology, and that's why he was under surveillance and with accompanying tactical teams to be able to...
For people sitting at home, they'll look at this and say, if he was being surveyed and so closely watched, why were 6 people able to be injured before he was shot? Can you explain that?
This individual is very surveillance conscious, and surveillance teams working with an offender over an extended period of weeks need to maintain sufficient distance for that surveillance to be effective. So they were as close as they possibly could be without compromising the surveillance operation.
So this is someone that has been closely monitored, and so as the Commissioner has said, there was nothing that we're aware of at this point in time to indicate that what he was going to do today was going to happen today. But obviously, because he was being closely followed and watched, they were there at the vicinity in the supermarket at the time that this occurred.
Prime Minister, sources just told us that he was recently released from jail. Can you confirm that? And Commissioner, just following on from Jess's question, if this man was on a terror watch list, why was he allowed in the community?
I had prepared a timeline of everything that we know of this individual and his interaction with our agencies and the law. I've been advised that because of suppression orders, I can't share that with you today, but I do undertake to go away and find a way that I can share that with you. I think it's in everyone's best interest that I'm able to do so. I just can't do it right now.
Do suppression orders apply to the deceased, though?
Unfortunately, when they're issued by the courts, it's the court's order.
Okay.
So as I've said, I prepared a timeline for you that I wanted to share, and I intend to share with you. I just unfortunately need to go through a process before I can.
Commissioner, following that question, why was someone who was on a terror watch list allowed in the community?
I'm confident that we have done absolutely everything we can within the bounds of the law and operationally to ensure that we could prevent what occurred with this individual, but there was nothing to prevent him being in the community, and we were doing absolutely everything possible to monitor him, and indeed the fact that we were able to intervene so quickly in roughly 60 seconds shows just how closely we were watching.
We're in the position to do so. You'll see at every point, every attempt we've made to use the law to the greatest extent we could. The fact that he was in the community will be an illustration of the fact that we haven't succeeded in using the law to the extent we would have liked. That is why he was being closely monitored at all times.
And that mosque?
And so that is, given he was in the community but being closely monitored at all times, he had a surveillance team monitoring him and a special tactics group that you can see was at the supermarket at the time.
So does that mean that mosque that's been cordoned, does that mean that mosque that's been cordoned off was also under police surveillance? And I think a lot of people will be concerned about a backlash against the Muslim community. Perhaps you could
that would be wrong. That would be absolutely wrong. The community here has been nothing but helpful and supportive. It would be wrong to direct any frustration at anyone beyond this individual. That is who is culpable, that is who is responsible, no one else.
Completely accepting the suppression orders,
yeah.
What can you tell us about the motivations or the ideology?
Violent ideology and ISIS inspired.
And you're confident he was a lone wolf actor?
Yes.
You're not looking for anyone else in relation to this?
No.
Prime Minister, can you please go over what you said when you said we're not using the law as much as I would have liked to in this case? What measures would have you liked to see put in place?
No. So we've utilised the law as to the full extent we've been able to, I think was the point that I was trying to make. And he was obviously in the community, and as additional protection, we had that surveillance team who was also monitoring him as well.
So this man, was he an ISIS sympathiser?
Well, he obviously was a supporter of ISIS ideology. However you choose to describe it.
Are there many other people like this in the community? I mean, how many people are there like?
I consider this is an individual who was known to multiple agencies. A range of efforts were undertaken around this particular individual. There are very few I would classify in this way.
Do you have any indication?
Yes, I was personally aware of him. Yes, I was.
Prior to this?
Yes, I was.
Do you have any indication?
Can we just clarify? You said that the officers were in the supermarket at the time that the man began his actions, the attack?
They were as close as they could be.
Does that mean they were inside the supermarket?
They were able to hear when the commotion started, so they were very close by.
Is there any issues with the footage?
Jessica, then I'll come back to Jane.
Is there any issue with the footage that's being circulated at the moment in relation to them, if they were part of that team? Like, are there any compromised or anything like that?
We would ask media to be responsible about what is published now to protect the identity of our people, but I'm not saying that any of the people in the video are or aren't.
And were any of the people injured? Were they police officers?
No, the people injured are believed to be shotters.
I'll come to Jane, then back to Tova, and then into the front.
Do you have any indication of how long it might take to get those suppression orders lifted?
I'll need to seek a little bit of advice on that. I also want to check whether or not, how far they extend. As I say, my view is that it's in everyone's best interest to put out all of the information that we have available to us, and all of our knowledge of this individual and his history here, given that you'll see that he's been known to us since 2016.
This man, it's fair to say he's been in the courts in the last year, though. Is that right? I mean,
I won't, if you'll forgive me, if you just give me the time to go through the process in order to give you a full history rather than jumping into speculation around timeline.
And we are leaving that press conference there with the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and the Police Commissioner Andrew Costa. Kia ora e te iwi haere aki nei I a checkpoint. If you are just joining us, a man has been shot dead after what the Prime Minister has described as a terror attack at a West Auckland Countdown supermarket this afternoon. The incident started unfolding at 2:30 inside Lynn Mall. The Prime Minister says the man was a Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in 2011. She described the man as a lone wolf and the incident as despicable and hateful. Many people were inside the mall either to do their grocery shopping or for vaccinations. The Police Commissioner says the man used a knife obtained from the supermarket to harm people. 6 people have been injured, 3 of them critically. We'll have more on this developing story throughout the program. Don't forget, you can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us at Checkpoint, or flick us an email at checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now for the headlines.
Kia ora, Lisa. RNZ News headlines. Ko Sarah Thompson, tōku ingoa. The Prime Minister has described the man who carried out a deadly attack in a West Auckland supermarket as a terrorist and has admitted his ideology was ISIS-inspired. 6 people have been injured, including 3 in a critical condition and 1 seriously, by a man shot dead by police at a Countdown supermarket in Lynn. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern revealed the attacker was a known threat and had been under monitoring. She says the individual was shot within 60 seconds of the attack. The police commissioner says the man had travelled from his home to the supermarket and was under surveillance by a police tactical unit during that time. Andrew Costa says the team was as close as possible, and when he approached 2 team members with his knife, he was shot and killed by the officers. Ms Ardern says the man was a Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in October 2011. He came under surveillance due to his ideology in 2016. She says the government had used every surveillance power available to them to keep people safe. One person inside the supermarket described it as chaos as scared people rushed to get out the doors when they realised an attack was underway. Another person outside a pharmacy about 20 metres away heard half a dozen gunshots. Our reporter at the scene says there remains a heavy police presence and people are still there giving statements. The mall itself will be shut for at least a couple of days. Health officials are warning against complacency despite fewer community cases today. There are 28 new cases, 1 in Wellington, the rest in Auckland. The Director of Public Health, Dr Caroline McElnay, says it's a good sign, but outbreaks can have a long tail. Dr McElnay says the total number of unlinked cases has fallen from 65 to 31. A computer science expert is describing the scale of the attack, which took down internet services this afternoon, as exceptional. Vocus lost services for about an hour, affecting companies across the country, including Spark, Vodafone and Slingshot. Professor Dave Parry from AUT says denial of services attacks happen all the time, but the fact this one targeted a major internet infrastructure provider makes it more serious. Those are your headlines. Our next news and sport update is at 6.
No mai hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. In other news, a cyber attack has created nationwide internet outages and major working from home headaches this afternoon. Internet infrastructure provider Vocus, which operates Auckland Slingshot, Flip and Stuff Fibre, was hit just after 1 o'clock with internet out for around an hour. Jean Bell filed this report.
Today's attack were DDoS attacks, and they work by flooding a website with fake requests exceeding its capacity, meaning normal, legitimate requests can't get through. Internet NZ's Chief Security Officer, Sam Sargent, says it's the same technique that was used to target the NZX in August last year.
Imagine your driveway when suddenly one day delivery vans and taxis keep turning up unrequested by you. Someone malicious out there has requested those services and are flooding your driveway. You didn't ask for this. You can't leave until this attack clears up.
The attacks temporarily cut internet to thousands of people around the country this afternoon. Reports came in from all over the country, but mostly in the North Island, including Auckland, Hamilton and Wellington. AUT Professor of Computer Science Dave Parry calls this style of attack commonplace, but this was of significant scale.
The fact of the matter is that there's attacks of this sort all the time, all around the world, and of course there have been here in New Zealand previously as well. But the scale of this attack, I don't know what the actual data size is at the moment, but it will be very large, and of course the actual effect in terms of taking down major ISPs is huge.
There are filters throughout the international connection system that attempt to fend off these kinds of attacks. But it appears this type is new on the scene and slipped by undetected before being quickly fixed.
And this will be a new one, which hasn't been seen before, so it isn't automatically rejected. And so it took an hour or whatever it is to work out how to protect against it and block it out.
He thinks the attack is an intimidation attempt by hackers with dollar signs in their eyes.
The message will have been, look what we can do and pay us some money or we'll do it again. It's very annoying and it's very disruptive, but it's probably not particularly dangerous.
Dave Parry wouldn't be surprised if there was another fleeting attack in the next few days.
I suspect that they probably will try again, and they may be successful for a time, but it'll probably be a shorter outage next time because there'll be a lot of resources being moved into the cybersecurity space right now, both from government and from industry.
Auckland University's School of Computer Science Dr Rizwan Ashgar says companies should have guidelines on protection and response to DDoS attacks, particularly following the cyber attack on Waikato DHB.
Having a plan in place for ransomware attacks. So the best thing is to be prepared for mitigating these kind of cyber attacks, and there should be some protection in place.
He says protection measures could range from simple firewall protection to in-house programs. A Vocus spokesperson confirmed the issue related to a DDoS attack. Mitigation measures were in place to reduce the impact. No current outages are being reported and services would continue to be monitored.
It is 20 to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. And Muriaki ina Pitapita kōrero. After the news at 6, we will speak to the Auckland Mayor, Phil Goff. And just to bring you up to date, if you are just joining us, the Prime Minister has revealed that the attack at a countdown in West Auckland was terrorism. It was a national who arrived from, a Sri Lankan national arrived in the country in October 2011 and became a person of national security interest from 2016. He was under surveillance at the time of the attack, and the police say officers intervened and shot him as quickly as possible. He obtained a knife inside the supermarket. We'll keep you updated with that developing story. In other news, vaccinators are going from whare to whare with Pfizer shots in the far north to make sure nobody misses out. The region's population has been identified as one of the most vulnerable to COVID-19 complications, with large proportions of elderly people and Māori who are at high risk of hospitalisation from the virus. Today, a roving mobile vaccine clinic began visiting homes and small businesses to see people who have otherwise found it difficult to get themselves to a rollout site. Sam Ollie reports from Te Tai Tokerau.
At the end of his driveway this morning, Grant Tahere got his first COVID-19 vaccine.
It's a great thing where the health authorities come to the people, actually where they live, for those that can't make it into town.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister reiterated her call for innovative plans to vaccinate Pasifika and Māori. Today, in a newly loosened lockdown at level 3, Te Ora o Ngāpuhi and St John had an answer. Every week from now on, they will be teaming up for hikoi to homes where Māori and Pasifika, who have missed out on jabs so far, live. Newly vaccinated Kaikohe man Simon Tinamu says it's made immunisation much easier.
And I was going to have to take a day off work, so the fact they're here, oh, it's beautiful. The more they get it, the better, eh?
The kaupapa also includes going to small workplaces. One of today's stops was a Turners and Growers orchard at Waipapa to inoculate staff, mostly Ni Vanuatu RSE workers. They described it as a lockdown highlight.
Because I just want to keep my family safe back in Vanuatu. When sometime I go home, they're going to save. I'm not going to take the corona back home.
I'm glad here to the company to make me get a vaccine. It is important for us RSEs because we are working on the different farms.
The new door-to-door mahi also involves visiting hesitant whānau. Te Ora o Ngāpuhi Chief Operating Officer Tia Ashby explains.
Addressing some of the vaccine hesitancy, so we are addressing some of the barriers to accessing a physical clinical site by bringing the service to them at home. Some have been a bit hesitant to come in due to it's a level 4 lockdown and they felt coming into an area where there's a lot of people, they might actually get COVID-19. Other reasons are whānau may not have vehicles or they could be immobile.
And for anyone who is on the fence, Grant Tahere has something to say after his first dose today.
It is a life-threatening health issue, not just in New Zealand but all over the world, so don't hesitate.
It is almost 6:15. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muriaki in a pita pita kōrero. After the news at 6, we will talk to Auckland Mayor Phil Goff. Returning to our top story tonight, a violent extremist has been shot and killed by police after carrying out an attack that left 6 injured at a supermarket in West Auckland. Joining me now is Sanjana Hatua, who is a social media and violence expert. Thank you for joining us this evening. What do you make of what we know so far?
It is extremely disturbing and equally distressing to hear of the news, which is still breaking. And as I understand it, there's a Sri Lankan national involved, and this is not something, obviously, that any of us expected from the Sri Lankan community. I can speak on behalf of the community that we completely reject the violence that has been expressed today, and we stand in solidarity with the victims, and we are extremely shocked and surprised that this occurred.
Was there any suggestion that there was social media chatter that something was about to happen?
Certainly not to my knowledge. This seems to be what academics call stochastic violence, which is a sudden expression of it, which may not have indications prior to the attack. But I understand from the PM's comments that the person has been a person of interest since 2016, details of which are under suppression quite legitimately. So it remains to be seen what the government actually knew of the individual and his driving motivation, if anyone can identify that prior to today.
And the hallmarks or the way this has been carried out, you say it appears to, almost be spontaneous rather than well planned?
We don't know that yet. I am mindful of a similar kind of attack that took place in Dunedin a couple of months ago. Whether this was planned or not, or whether this occurred at the spur of the moment, it remains to be seen. Maybe the government has that information, which they will release in due course, but certainly, to the extent that I know of, there has been no what you call signature or chatter or evidence of an attack of this nature to the knowledge, to the extent that I know of.
The Prime Minister described him as having ideology that supports ISIS. Yes. Is there any evidence of anyone claiming responsibility?
Not yet, no. And this is so surprising and shocking and distressing because this is out of character, and it comes out of the blue for the community here in general, and certainly for me as an academic looking into this. And so the ideology that the Prime Minister said that the individual has some affiliation to or has been inspired by is certainly rejected, obviously, goes without saying, by the community here, but it remains to be seen the degree to which that connection, in the days ahead, we'll find out more, I suppose, about exactly what that connection was.
Sanjana, people will be absolutely shell-shocked to have a terror attack in New Zealand once and then to have another one.
I would imagine so, and rightfully so. As I said, it remains to be seen what motivated this individual, whether it was something that the individual himself took upon to do today, or whether it is something that is connected to other individuals and a larger terror network, as it were. These are things that the Prime Minister and I'm sure the government will reveal in due course.
The Prime Minister made the comment that what has happened is despicable, it's hateful and it's wrong, but it was carried out by an individual. This is not about faith, a culture or ethnicity. What would you like to say about that?
I completely concur and endorse those statements and sentiments.
So what will happen now in terms of looking at those things that you're talking about, determining whether this person is acting on their own, what is the driving force behind them, if there are any individuals who have assisted or encouraged?
I would imagine that's a question you need to pose to the government, because I don't quite know, insofar as I think the community will be in New Zealand deeply supportive, needless to say, of any kind of investigation into this. And there will be, I think, a full and fair and rapid investigation as to how this could occur and measures to stop it from ever happening again.
How do you think the Sri Lankan community in New Zealand will be feeling?
Shocked, surprised, appalled, and in complete solidarity with both what the Prime Minister said and the people of Aotearoa. It goes without saying, I think.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Sanjana Hatotua, who is a social media and violence expert. In news just ahead, Countdown, I believe, has released a statement to us. I'm seeing this for the first time, so let me share it with you. It says, this is from Kitty Hannafin, who is Countdown's General Manager of Safety. It says, we are devastated by this violent attack in our Lynn Mall store today. Our hearts are heavy knowing what our team and customers have witnessed and been through. Our thoughts are with those who are injured and their families, and we are supporting all our Lynn Mall team in particular. Operating with COVID-19 in the community puts our team under considerable pressure as they do their very best every day to keep each other and our customers safe. This event today, particularly so soon after the incident at Dunedin Central, is very distressing. Our whole team will be deeply affected by what has happened, and we want them to have a chance to talk and to get the support that they need. We know the customers are very reliant on our stores at the moment, but we hope they understand that tomorrow morning especially, our team has to come first. Over the last few weeks, Kiwis have shown our team great gratitude and kindness. It's difficult to comprehend the events of today, and we are in deep shock. The safety of our team and our customers is always our priority, and this is at the heart of our COVID-19 response as well. We will cooperate with the police in any way we can to understand what's happened. Due to this late opening, the priority hour for emergency services and MIQ medical workers will start from Sunday, 5th of September. The store in question, it says all stores throughout Aotearoa will open at 10 a.m. on Saturday in light of the events that have happened at the Countdown in Lynn Mall. If you are just joining us, the Prime Minister has revealed that this person, the terrorist, arrived from Sri Lanka in 2011 and has been a person of interest 2016. They were under heavy surveillance and were being followed by a team at the time of the attack. The attacker obtained a knife inside the Countdown and was shot by those surveilling him within 60 seconds, the police say. We know that there are 6 other people who have been injured, 3 of them seriously. They have been taken to Auckland Hospital. The Prime Minister has made it clear that she has compiled information and a timeline of this person's movements, but there are currently court suppression orders that prevent her from sharing them publicly at the moment. At a press conference earlier, she said what has happened is despicable, it's hateful, and it is wrong, but it was carried out by an individual, not a faith, a culture or ethnicity. We will bring you developments as they come to hand. Businesses decimated by the construction of Auckland's city rail link say hardship payments are long overdue, but don't nearly cover their losses. Those on Albert Street in central Auckland say the disruption has deterred most of their customers, and many have closed their doors at a loss. Today, the government and Auckland Council announced a $12 million hardship fund for affected shops. John Bond reports.
Shabana Ranchoji owns Roma Blooms, a flower shop on Albert Street. Their shop has at times been entirely obscured by large fences with winding walkways to the shop's front door. Flowers are often an impulse purchase, and they've lost a lot of business since construction started near them in 2016.
It's been 5.5 years of battle with CRL. What we've gone without, the mental, everything that we've been through. There's nothing that can make up the loss of what we've gone through, but from here onwards to do the right thing.
The hardship fund for severely impacted shops is welcomed, but having lost business over many years, it struck Mrs. Ranchoji as odd that it could only be applied for losses incurred since earlier this year. They've struggled through, but she thinks a dozen shops have closed directly as a result. A hardship fund is cold comfort for those who've shut down.
They've lost everything. They've closed their businesses and they've in serious debt, what they've had to sell.
The advocacy group for businesses there, Heart of the City, says it is good a decision's been made, but it's long overdue. Chief Executive Viv Beck says they had hoped for more money and haven't yet seen the detail.
There's definitely a lot to still work through here, but on the face of it, it's good news that the decision has been made.
Auckland Mayor Phil Goff says public works often disrupt business, but never before has central or local government offered ex gratia payments like this.
There is no legal obligation on council or on government, but I think there is a moral obligation. I think that this is the reasonable and fair thing to do.
The Transport Minister, Michael Wood, says it's unfortunate a hardship fund wasn't built into the project from the start, And from now on, large public projects will. Phil Goff says this is a first.
I think that this does represent a change in policy, and I think it is an overdue change of policy, that when you have significant disruption affecting small businesses, then there needs to be some assistance given to those who are affected.
Mr Goff says an independent allocator will make the judgment once applications start to roll in. Businesses have not yet been provided the eligibility criteria, and they'll have to provide evidence it was the construction that caused the downturn. Shabana Ranchoji says the huge financial loss has put her and her husband under immense stress, and there are some things money can't buy.
The money is far too late with other things that we have lost that we will never get back again. Our age, we will never get that back again. 5.5 years of what we've gone through, we are never going to get back again.
A number of issues have pushed the completion date back. The City Rail link's now not due until late 2024. And with Auckland under level 4 now, that may be delayed further. Whether the businesses can survive until then to reap the benefits is not clear.
A violent extremist and a known threat to New Zealand who was under constant surveillance has brought terror to an Auckland supermarket. 6 people were injured by the man after he entered the Countdown at Lynn Mall and obtained a knife within the store at around 2:30 this afternoon. He was shot and killed by police within 60 seconds of the attack unfolding. The Prime Minister said the man was a Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in 2011. She described the man as a lone wolf and described the incident as despicable and hateful. Many people were inside the mall either to do their grocery shopping or for vaccinations. The police commissioner says the man used a knife obtained from the supermarket to harm people. 6 people have been injured, 3 of them critically. Auckland Mayor Phil Goff joins us now. Phil, this is a city that is struggling at the moment, and now this.
Yeah, well, there's never a good time for a terrorist attack to take place, but taking place when people are under all of the pressures that are involved with Alert Level 4 makes it even worse, I guess. But I guess what's frustrating for all of us who have just listened to the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner is that they were constrained from sharing all of the information that they know about this individual because of a court order. And I understand, the Prime Minister of all people have to live under the law and can't go outside the law. But what is clear about it is that this person is an ideologically motivated terrorist, that his actions chose random victims. It's appalling that he could cause so much hurt in the space of a minute just with a knife. But I guess the police interceded as quickly as they were able in the specific situation, and ultimately he has paid the price of his actions.
Phil, were you hearing these details for the first time at the press conference, or had you been provided with a briefing or had any prior information about this individual?
No, I had absolutely no information about the individual, but I do know from my time in government and having carried out various roles such as Foreign Affairs and Justice, that the number of people that are under that sort of police surveillance, you could count on less than the fingers on one hand. This person, from the information that the Prime Minister has given us, was obviously a hate-filled person whose views were causing huge alarm to the police, but who had not acted in a way that the law enabled him to be kept in custody. Now, we're having this debate a little bit over hate speech at the moment, and people saying, "Oh no, you can't." People's views are their views, and they're allowed to express their views. But people like this, who obviously expressed views filled with hatred based on his ideology, the fact that you can't act against him would seem to be a potential gap in our law. And I'm sure, as well as the Independent Police Complaints Authority investigation and the coroner's investigation, Parliament will want to look pretty closely at whether the law is adequate, albeit in a democratic society such as we have, when a person that constitutes a risk so severe that he's kept under 24/7 surveillance, there can't be action against him. And I think that's going to exercise the minds of Parliament in the months to come.
Given the risk that this person was apparently believed to be, as mayor, how do you feel about the fact that you were oblivious to him in your city under constant surveillance at the high level of risk that he was regarded?
Oh, look, I wouldn't expect as mayor, and nor would most other elected representatives expect to be informed by the police about particular individuals who are seen to constitute a risk. We have many such individuals in terms of things like sexual offending. That's serious enough. But this man that was so hate-filled that he was prepared to take the lives of others randomly like that was an individual that obviously, was a threat to our society. The police recognised that. They couldn't put him in custody, and they had to do the next best thing, which was to keep him under 24/7 surveillance. But I wouldn't expect as mayor to be told of all of those cases. That wouldn't be reasonable.
We're coming up to the news at 6, Phil, but I just want to ask you, what is your message to people who may be feeling incredibly unsafe? The Commissioner said this guy was under constant surveillance, yet this still has happened. How can Aucklanders feel safe in their city?
Well, I think that, we regrettably have individuals like this, and the individual that attacked the mosques in Christchurch. It's not a common activity, but when it happens, it's shocking for the horror most of us just can't understand the venom and the hatred that can be held in a person's mind that motivates them to act like that. But does that mean that all of us are unsafe in our community? No, New Zealand remains one of the safer communities around the world, but that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't take every action that we can to try to increase that security and to look at the law where we think the law may not cover a situation where a man is regarded as such a threat, but no action can be taken against him. That's the question, I think, on all of our minds.
Appreciate your time this evening. That is Auckland Mayor Phil Goff. If you are just joining us, to recap, the Prime Minister has said this is a terrorist attack that occurred at the Lynn Mall countdown, that this person was under constant surveillance by a special team, and that they were the ones that, confronted him and shot him when he obtained a knife.
Ahiahi Marie, RNZ News at 6, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. This afternoon's stabbing attack in an Auckland supermarket was carried out by a radicalised Sri Lankan terrorist. 6 people were hurt, 3 seriously injured after a man walked into the Countdown supermarket in New Lynn Mall just before 3 o'clock this afternoon, picked up a knife and attacked people. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the man, a Sri Lankan national who came to New Zealand in 2011, had been of national security interest for 5 years.
The individual was under constant monitoring, and it was the police surveillance team and special tactics group who were part of that monitoring and surveillance that shot and killed him within, I'm told, the space of roughly 60 seconds of the attack starting.
Jacinda Ardern says the details say the reasons the man was known to security agencies are the subject of High Court suppression orders. The Police Commissioner, Andy Costa, says he is satisfied the police did everything they could to stop the terrorist attack. Mr Costa says a surveillance and tactical team were closely following the man as he travelled to the Countdown supermarket from his Gleneagles home this afternoon. The police intervened as quickly as they could. Mr Costa says it is not possible to be immediately next to someone under 24/7 surveillance at all times. An eyewitness to the attack saw a man running around with a knife and people frantically exiting the store. Eyewitness Michelle Miller says the incident was frightening.
It was just absolutely horrific. I feel sorry for the Countdown staff. I feel sorry for the people that were actually hurt here today. My prayers go out to them. The police have done an amazing job. They let the guy try and give himself up, but he wouldn't.
St John says ambulance staff were called to Countdown Lynn Mall in West Auckland around 2:40. While essential workers crossing the Alert Level 4 border around Auckland are being asked to get tested for now, the government's signalling it could become a requirement in the future. Main Freight and the New Zealand Trucking Association have expressed their surprise at the plan, which they say would be onerous and difficult to implement. Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson says at the moment it remains a request.
We're working towards a more systematic testing program. All that Dr. Bloomfield was doing yesterday was raising that we'd like people who are moving across the border to be able to be tested. The consultation happens now as we move from that position of it being an ask to it being something that we want to happen on a regular basis.
COVID-19 vaccinators have started going house to house in Titai Tokoro. The region's population has been identified as one of the most vulnerable to complications from the virus, with large proportions of elderly people and Māori at high risk of hospitalisation. In Alert Level 3 this morning, a mobile vaccine clinic began visiting homes and small businesses to see those who had otherwise found it difficult to get themselves to a rollout site. Kaikohe man Grant Tahiri says it was great to get his first Pfizer shot at the end of his driveway this morning. He says nobody should hesitate to get vaccinated against COVID-19. A computer science expert is describing the scale of the attack, which took down internet services this afternoon, as exceptional. Vocus lost services for about an hour, affecting companies across the country, including Spark, Vodafone and Slingshot. Professor Dave Parry from AUT says denial of services attacks happen all the time, but the fact this one targeted a major internet infrastructure provider makes it more serious.
The attackers have developed some new ways of basically making sure that seeing that the ISP on the New Zealand side doesn't recognise this as a denial of service attack until it's already had an effect.
Professor Parry says taking down major internet providers makes the attack exceptional. Stocks of the most common house insulation product, pink bats, have been exhausted outside of Auckland. The pandemic severing of the supply chain from Auckland is threatening shortages of common building materials. Fletcher Building says it has stopped making bats under Level 4 and even in Auckland has only extremely limited stock and none outside the city. It says once lockdown eases, it would take just 24 hours to get production running again. A shop owner hugely affected by the construction of the city rail link says a hardship fund is long overdue and doesn't nearly cover their losses. Today, the government and Auckland Council announced a $12 million fund for affected shops. Shobana Ranchoji owns Roma Blooms, a flower shop on Albert Street in Auckland. Their shop has at times been entirely obscured by large fences, swirling dust and machinery noise. She welcomes the funding, but says it's already taken a toll.
It's been 5.5 years of battle with CRL. What we've gone without, the mental, everything that we've been through. There's nothing that can make up the loss of what we've gone through, but from here onwards to do the right thing.
Moving now into sporting news, Brad Weber says he's ready to take his chance in the All Blacks number 9 jersey. The Chiefs halfback has been named to start Sunday's third Bledisloe Cup test against Australia in Perth. Weber is keen to capitalise on the chance, opened up with first-choice halfback Aaron Smith staying in New Zealand to await the birth of his second child.
Opportunities in the 9 jersey with the All Blacks, few and far between with Aaron around, but I was real keen to playing a game as big as this against the Australians. It'll be one of the biggest ones I've had to date, so pretty keen to state my claim pretty strongly this weekend.
Bowden and Scott Barrett will also start at first 5 and lock, respectively, with Richie Mo'onga and Sam Whitelock also staying at home due to the impending birth of new babies. And finally, New Zealand's gold medal tally at the Tokyo Paralympics sits at 5 after long jumper Anna Grimaldi's record-breaking result this afternoon. Nikita Howarth and Holly Robinson are also chasing medals on New Zealand's penultimate day of competition at the Games. Howarth qualified 8th fastest for the S750 metre butterfly final starting just after 9 o'clock tonight. Robinson is in action for the first time in Tokyo in the F46 javelin just before 10:30. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Country Life finds out how rural schools are embracing remote learning. Te Karehana Toi, a.k.a. Teeks, is this week's Friday Night Live act. Nathan Haynes, jazz musician, saxophone genius and throat cancer survivor, selects a mixtape. And while we hang out for the case numbers and lockdown levels to drop, we have a Sonic Tonic dedicated to patience on Nights Worth the Wait with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa, on air, online and on demand. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Aharoa Saturday. Northland, Coromandel and Gisborne, cloudy periods and isolated showers clearing about Gisborne overnight tonight. Auckland to Manawatu, including Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, also Hawke's Bay and Wairirapa, Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, will all be fine. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, fine today, partly cloudy tomorrow with isolated showers for Horowhenua and Kapiti Coast. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, cloudy periods and isolated showers, gale nor'westerlies in Fiordland tomorrow. For Otago and Southland, fine today, increasing high cloud tomorrow and strengthening nor'westerlies, possibly reaching severe gale in exposed parts of Southland and Clutha. And for the Chatham Islands, fine weather. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Ahoroe Saturday. It's now 8 minutes past 6.
Ngā mihi, Sarah, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. If you are just joining us, a violent extremist and a known threat to New Zealand who was under constant surveillance has brought terror to an Auckland supermarket. 6 people were injured by the man after he entered the Countdown at Lynn Mall and obtained a knife within the store at around 2:30 this afternoon. He was shot and killed by police within 60 seconds of the attack unfolding. The Prime Minister said the man was ISIS-inspired, a Sri Lankan national who arrived in New Zealand in 2011. She described the man as a lone wolf violent extremist and described the incident as a despicable, hateful attack that was wrong. Many people were inside the mall either to do their grocery shopping or for vaccinations. The police commissioner said the man used a knife obtained from the supermarket to harm people. 6 people have been injured, 3 of them critically. A short time ago, the Prime Minister and the Police Commissioner held a press conference detailing this country's second terrorist attack in 2 years.
This afternoon at approximately 2:40 p.m, a violent extremist undertook a terrorist attack on innocent New Zealanders in the New Lynn Countdown in Auckland.
Jacinda Ardern acknowledged the 6 innocent people who were attacked and are seriously injured.
This was a violent attack. It was senseless, and I am so sorry it happened.
She says the attack began at 20 to 3 and was undertaken by an individual who was a known threat to New Zealand.
The individual was under constant monitoring, and it was the police surveillance team and Special Tactics Group who were part of that monitoring and surveillance that shot and killed him within, I'm told, the space of roughly 60 seconds of the attack starting.
Police Commissioner Andrew Costa says the man was under heavy surveillance as a consequence of concerns about his ideology.
Today he travelled from where he lived in Gleneden to the Countdown in New Lynn, as he had done before. He was closely watched by surveillance teams and a tactical team to monitor his actions and behaviour. He entered the store as he had done before. He obtained a knife from within the store. Surveillance teams were as close as they possibly could be to monitor his activity. When the commotion started, 2 police tactical operators from the STG moved to his location and engaged him. When he approached them with the knife, he was shot and killed.
Jacinda Ardern says the man was a Sri Lankan who arrived in this country in October 2011.
He became a person of national security interest from 2016. The detailed reasons he is known to the agencies is the subject of suppression orders made by the court. In my view, it is in the public interest to share as much as we can in this case. I'm seeking advice on what we can do to facilitate that sharing of information as soon as possible. What I can say is that we have utilised every legal and surveillance power available to us to try and keep people safe from this individual. Many agencies and people were involved, and all were motivated by the same thing, trying to keep people safe.
The Prime Minister says the attack was carried out by an individual, not a faith or culture or ethnicity.
But an individual person who was gripped by ideology that is not supported here, by anyone or any community. He alone carries the responsibility for these acts. Let that be where the judgment falls.
Our political editor, Jane Patterson, joins me now. Jane, the Prime Minister obviously very clearly under some legal constraints when she addressed the nation this afternoon.
That's right. So there are suppression orders in place, and there are that basically means that she is very limited at the moment in really spelling out the whole timeline from when the man arrived in New Zealand, the actions that put him under police surveillance. She did confirm that he had been in prison, but gave no more detail about that. So basically, they are now working to try to get those suppression orders lifted, which still apply even though the man is deceased. We don't have a time frame on when that might be, but the Prime Minister seems very, very keen to get that lifted to be able to really share much more information. But already, even without that, we have a very clear picture of who the man, what he was driven by in terms of his ideology, the fact that he did pose a threat, and also the surveillance that he'd been under for quite some time. And under the current law, there are terror laws, 2002, the Terrorism Suppression Act, and also search and surveillance. Now, the Police Commissioner, Andrew Costa, wouldn't specify exactly which legislation was being used, but I imagine it's probably a combination of different laws that the police use to have such intense and ongoing surveillance. So once those suppression orders are lifted, if they can be lifted, we will be given much more detail about exactly what he had done and potentially his actions that had, as I said, brought him to the attention and under such intense monitoring.
And until today, this afternoon, New Zealanders, Aucklanders would be oblivious to the fact that this man was in our community. Do we have any idea about how many others there are who are subject to such extreme monitoring?
Well, this is the problem, because often these orders come with these heavy suppression orders. So the Prime Minister wouldn't give any detail. She was asked a few times, but it did sound like this man was at the higher, most serious end of the spectrum. It's, as I said, we asked for that detail. We don't know if there are or if they just can't talk about it. And I don't know whether that's going to be able to be something that she could give a better indication of. The Police Commissioner did say that there was no further threat to the public. They very much see this person as a lone wolf attack. New Zealand's national terror threat remains at medium. It won't go up. So that gives an indication that he wasn't working with others. However, of course, that does not mean at all that there are not other people in the same situation in New Zealand that we are not being told about.
And Jane, the Prime Minister was adamant that, well, they had taken advantage of all the legal levers that there were to keep an eye on this person and to have as much control as possible. Does that suggest that there is a gap here in the laws around surveillance, which is obviously a really controversial area?
Absolutely, and as a result of the mosque attacks, new legislation that's actually before a select committee at the moment would give the police better powers to take action against somebody if they were planning a terrorism attack. Now, under the law at the moment, it is an offence if someone's basically caught in the act, like very close to carrying out an offence, action can be taken. But this legislation that's before Parliament at the moment would make it a much broader offence, so you could get somebody at the start or for a much broader time frame. But that is, of course, not in place at the moment. So there is a gap if there had been actions that he had been taken that caused such alarm. There was not a legal avenue from the time that he was in prison and has obviously been released at some point for them to keep him in detention or keep him out of the community. So that legislation, as I said, as a result of the mosque attack, and was it moved swiftly enough? Should it have been moved through urgency? Now, these are questions that are going to be asked, always, of course, in hindsight, but there is law at the moment that maybe would have given them more ability to contain this man's movements within the community.
And from a political perspective, Jane, obviously this has happened at a time where the country is facing a battle on another front, COVID-19. Obviously, we've got the Delta outbreak, and Auckland is still operating at alert level 4. There is a lot going on.
It is. It's just devastating for the people of Auckland who are already dealing with so much. But as always with these tragedies, it strikes at the national heart. This is something that, of course, it happened the city of Auckland, but, the whole nation will be feeling this. And you heard Jacinda Ardern too make a plea not for retaliation. She really emphasised the point. This is about one person. This is not about a faith. She's obviously worried about retaliation against the Muslim community, and the plea is out there. Hold this man to blame for this act. Do not hold the community, do not hold a faith or religion responsible for this act.
Thanks, Jane. That is our political editor, Jane Patterson. I'm joined now by Extremism Research Fellow from Auckland University, Kate Hanna. Hi, Kate. From what we've heard about this man, what's your assessment of the situation?
Hi, Lisa. Look, I've only really caught up on it in the last half hour. We were doing Friday Zoom drinks with the whānau when Bridget called me. What we can see is that this is really very much in this grey zone area that we talk about in this kind of work, where somebody has expressed a bunch of really extreme and quite alienating and different to New Zealand's cultural values set of ideas and principles, including threats of violence, including sharing images on videos, etc. And police and law enforcement in various different ways have tried to use the existing legislation to deal with it. More will come to hand when we do know more, but it's incredibly distressing that this has happened in Tamaki Makaurau.
The Prime Minister has described his ideology as aligned to ISIS and also described him as a lone wolf. What do we know about what motivates individuals to act in such extreme ways?
Look, I mean, the lone wolf descriptor is one that... How can a person is a lone wolf because they're not part of an organised group? But organised groups are less and less common, and what we see is people being radicalised and exposed to more and more extreme language and suggestions through connections that are what we think of as loose ties. So people that they might be connected to on the internet and exposed to imagery and rhetoric that encourages them towards these acts. And so it's not like someone as a lone wolf just suddenly snaps and behaves in a certain manner. It's that they've been built up to it over a long period of time through exposure to kind of a set of really closed off and limited cultural ideas. Some people would call it an echo chamber. That's kind of what people talk about online, is the idea of an echo chamber. And this person most likely has been in that kind of echo chamber for a period of time. From what I've seen, he first came to government attention in 2016, and so obviously potentially since then has been exposed to this kind of material that's caused him to go down this path.
Kate, would you expect anyone, and when I say anyone, I mean any group, to step forward and try and take claim to this attack?
It's possible. It's possible, Lisa, that one of the various different permeations might. It doesn't necessarily mean that they had anything to do with it. It is something that does take place.
So in terms of what we've heard about the surveillance he was under, it seems very strict surveillance, 24/7, 2 teams, a special tactical team and police involved in the surveillance, going with him everywhere, yet he was able to carry this out. Is there a deficit in what we're legally able to do in terms of monitoring people like this?
Look, I think we definitely know that there are, after what happened in Aotearoa in 2019 and what's happened today, that there are regulatory and legal limitations across a wide range of things, including understanding what happens online, understanding how people are exposed to information and disinformation that may encourage them down these pathways, and also understanding how we then use legislation or regulation that may have been designed quite a long time ago to deal with a very, very fast-moving and very, very heightened environment under COVID-19.
How can we fight a threat that we're not even aware of is in our community?
That is really, really difficult to understand how we might do that. And to be honest, more broadly, we've been observing the escalation of rhetoric more likely to be racist and anti-Islamic and anti-Māori and anti-Pacifica. That's what broadly we're observing across social media and media landscapes in New Zealand. But this is always the difficulty with a democracy. We have to work within the legal limitations. I don't know enough about it to be able to comment more than that. Sorry, Lisa.
No, I appreciate that. Kate, what would your message be to people who are feeling really unsettled and angry?
Oh, Lisa, we're all so stressed out here in Tamaki Makaurau. It's been a hard couple of weeks, and we really just need to remember that it's very much what the PM said. This is one individual motivated by rhetoric and exposure to lies and twistings of truths about how the world works. This is not about a faith or a people or any kind of ethnicity. Our Muslim community will be absolutely devastated tonight and praying for those who are in hospital.
Thank you for speaking with us this evening. That is Kate Hanna, who is a fellow at Auckland University. It is almost 24 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Our reporter Louise Tenuth is at Lynn Mall, where events unfolded earlier this afternoon. Louise, can you bring us up to date with what's happening there now?
Hi Lisa, I'm on the corner of the Lynn Mall road that leads to the Lynn Mall countdown here, and as you can see behind me, it's all been cordoned off. There's a high police presence with 2 armed police officers in the area. No traffic is going down around that area, and just to the right of me there's a group of people waiting to get into their cars inside that car park. It's going to be a waiting game for them. Police can't tell them when they'll be able to get in, and as we understand it, there are still people inside that car park waiting to get out. Some of them witnesses to the attack, so they'll be getting statements taken from them. And as we understand it, police say that the mall will be closed at least for the next couple of days.
Can see from the scene behind you, Louise, that there is obviously a pretty strong police presence there. Any idea of the numbers involved in this operation?
No clear numbers have been given, but just driving around the area over the last half an hour or so, you can really tell that things have ramped up. Most streets around the area that do lead to the mall have been cordoned off. There are armed police patrolling the streets and traffic has been diverted. So it's safe to say that people can rest assured that things have ramped up and they will continue to do so over the next couple of days and of course throughout tonight.
Louise, just remind us, what do we know so far about this attack?
Yeah, so obviously, as spoken in the presser this afternoon, the Prime Minister has said that this man that carried out the attack was known to police. He was on 24/7 surveillance, and he was known to them. He went to this local countdown at the New Lynn Mall, and he went in unarmed, but he carried out the attack after grabbing a knife at that supermarket where he injured 6 people. 3 of them are critically injured and have been taken to Auckland City Hospital. 1 person's in a moderate condition at Middlemore Hospital, and there's another person who was injured and is in Waitakere Hospital. Now, speaking to people here today that were witnesses to the attack, there was a pharmacy that was involved in hunkering down and hiding people inside their store. Basically, the man was shot dead by police after the attack took place. It all happened very quickly. People were fleeing the scene and left very distressed. It's clear to say it's been a really dark day and evening for New Zealand.
Thank you, Louise. That is Louise Tenuth, live from the scene of that terror attack this afternoon. Witnesses have described absolute terror inside Lynn Mall, where during the level 4 lockdown, people had to come to do their grocery shopping or to go to the pharmacy inside the mall to be vaccinated. Anya was inside the mall as the terrorist attack unfolded.
I just heard that someone was getting stabbed, and then I heard like 6 or 7 gunshots.
Whereabouts were you, Anya?
I was waiting just outside of the pharmacy in Lynn Mall.
Yeah, and what brought you into the mall today?
I was getting my COVID vaccine.
Okay, and so how far away is the supermarket from where you were?
About like 20 metres.
Yeah. And can you tell me what could you hear? Could you hear people talking or yelling, and what sounds?
I could just hear the people at Chemist Warehouse just yelling that there was someone getting stabbed. Then like a bunch of security people started like approaching the area, and then I just heard gunshots, and it was just very chaotic.
Pretty scary it sounds like too, Anya.
Yeah, it was. I tried to stay as calm as possible.
And where did you go?
I went inside the pharmacy. So mostly everyone who was just waiting there just ran into the pharmacy and what hid in the little rooms.
Yeah, tell me about that. Whereabouts did you go exactly?
So they're like these the rooms where you get the vaccine. They're like real small, but we went into those. There were about like 7 of us in the room, including like a little baby.
And did you lock the door, or what happened?
Well, there was no lock on the door, so this one guy just like stood near it, and he kind of like used his upper body to like stop it from opening.
And what were people saying in the room?
People were literally just panicking. Everyone was like calling their family. Some people called the police. They were just all trying to stay calm.
Did you call anyone, Anya?
Yes, I called my dad because he was waiting for me in the car park.
And what did he tell you to do?
He just told me to stay where I was, and he said that he'll meet me outside.
And that was Anya, who was at the mall to get her COVID vaccination this afternoon when events began to unfold there. As the Prime Minister has told the public this afternoon, the terrorist arrived from Sri Lanka in October 2011, and became a person of national interest in 2016. She's unable to go through a detailed timeline of events relating to this man because of a court suppression order, which she says she hopes to address. The police say that he was under constant supervision and surveillance, and that 2 teams were following him at the time that this happened. He was shot and killed within 60 seconds, they say, of the attack unfolding. There are 6 people who have been injured, 3 of them seriously. The Prime Minister has said it is despicable, it is hateful, and it is wrong, but this was carried out by an individual, not a faith, a culture or ethnicity. The Late News team will keep you up to date throughout the evening, nights with Brian Crump with breaking news and all you need to know. Kim Hill will host an RNZ News special, a 1-hour special from 8 o'clock tomorrow.
Kia ora tātou, RNZ News headlines at 6:30, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. The Prime Minister says this afternoon's stabbing attack in an Auckland supermarket was carried out by a terrorist inspired by ISIS ideology who was under a close police watch. 6 people were hurt, 3 seriously, after the man picked up a knife in Lynn Mall Countdown